Hi everyone, today I'm making my tag for September for the 12 tags for 2014. You can see here, actually I have already made my tags, but I forgot to film this bit while I show you my inspiration. So this was Tim Holtz's September tag with those gorgeous butterflies and that fabulous stamp, and you can see I've already been playing with my alcohol inks and I have made my tags. I just had to film that bit in retrospect. So now I'm going to talk to you about a technique that Tim showed us this month, and I've never seen this done before, and it was quite a nice technique to do, but it did take me a little while to perfect. So I am hoping to tell you a few tips, a few things that I learnt along the way. So first of all, we're working on a glossy cardstock. We're also using a mask, and I've got my what are these called that I'm pulling this felt from? My ink blending tool, and instead of using the foam I'm going to be using a piece of felt. Now I like to start with a clean piece of felt because I'm using the clear and I want just a clear alcohol ink going onto my cardstock. So keep hold of your tag so that it doesn't move, and make sure that when you dip your felt into the blending ink that it doesn't get too wet. If you were using this with paint, if you had a sponge that was full of paint, the paint would push underneath the mask and you wouldn't get such a clean image. So don't wet the felt too much with the blending solution, and you are working fairly swiftly and just pouncing that alcohol through the mask. Now the thing that I did, you can actually see this image. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see this on camera, but I did just pick up the edges of my mask to make sure that I had a nice clean image, and I'm just about to do that here, and you can see there that the ink has gone through nicely. So if you get something that doesn't look like that, looks a bit like a mess, then it could well be that your felt was too wet and you'll need to try again. So that's the step that creates the resist. I'm not quite sure how this works because it seems like we're putting alcohol on top of alcohol. It just does. That's all I can say. I'm sure that Tim could give you a better explanation of the chemistry that goes on here. Make sure that your blending solution is dry before you move on to the next step. And remember that we're working on a glossy cardstock, not a photo paper. It will not work on the kind of paper that you put through your printer to print out photographs. Now I wanted a blue background, so I'm going to add blue alcohol ink to my ink blending tool, and I'm doing it slightly differently to the way Tim did. I'm using my blending tool to add the ink to my the area that will end up being my tag, and you can see I'm just swooshing it over the area that I've already got the blending solution on, and it is definitely coming out as a resist. So I'm taking the ink again, I just want to make things slightly darker, adding it to the felt and then just swooshing it over the area again just to darken things up slightly. So remember, when you're doing this you must clean your stencils with soap and water when you've finished. And I tried a little experiment on this one where I tried to blend some yellow alcohol ink in with the blue, and it worked quite well, and it's what made me end up making two tags at the end of this because I liked both versions. So this was my first experiment at blending two colours together. So I'm starting out with the yellow, and it's not a perfect blend, so I decided that I would just try a little bit of blending solution, the clues on the bottle, to see if I can get that blend a little bit better. Now I wasn't sure if this would affect my resist, but touch wood, and very luckily it hasn't done, but it has blended those colours a little bit nicer together. So that's my tag base number one. So for my second background I just wanted a plain blue tag, so I'm going over the stencil with my alcohol ink. And don't forget what I said about cleaning your stencils after you've finished using them. Good swish through some warm soapy water and let it dry, and your stencil will be free from that alcohol. And then I'm coming over the dried alcohol resist with the light blue alcohol ink, and then the resist is revealed. I found that the quicker I moved over the stencil, the smoother the finish. So it depends on what kind of person you are. I'm a bit of a control freak and like to see things blended where I want them blended, and so I'm just taking a little bit of time to make sure that the alcohol gives a smooth finish. And you do have to work fairly quickly because obviously the alcohol dries very, very quickly. And also be very careful about where you work. Make sure that you are in a well ventilated area, and that's my two backgrounds that I'll be working with for my tag. So the next step that Tim did was to create his butterflies for his tag, and I am going to be using leaves because I don't have the butterflies, and I've got a leaf stamp, and since it's autumn I decided to go with leaves. It also went with the alcohol colours that I have in my collection. So I'm using a red and yellow here to create some autumnal shades, and I've also got a little bit of a pearl mixative. And all you do to create this effect is to dot a couple of the colours onto your felt and then pounce it onto the glossy cardstock. And the nice thing about alcohol inks is even when you have put down the first layer of alcohol, when you come back in with another layer, they blend and sort of create nice pleasing patterns which are ideal for the leaves that I intend to be punching out of this cardstock. So that's one that's sort of really reds, yellows and oranges, and then I decided that I wanted some with a little bit of green in the mix. So some leaves that aren't quite as far gone in the fall change of colour. Now and again you'll see me adding a little bit of blending alcohol, and that just helps the alcohols, the colours blend together more freely. And you really can just keep working on this until you're happy with the overall effect. So you can see I've got two different colourways here to punch my leaves from, and I decided that on the yellow and blue tag I wanted a slightly different colour. So this time I'm going to go with the yellow and the green with little bits of blue. And you'll see when I put this or these two tags together that I used the colour that you see now plus the green, red and yellow one on one tag, and then the red, orange and yellow with the red and green one on the other tag. So definitely giving my alcohol inks a workout. It's been a while since they've been out of the box. You tend to forget you've got some of these products, and they really are a nice thing to work with. The only thing you do have to be a little bit careful of is the fumes, so you do need to be in a well ventilated area. And the other thing is when you clean up your craft mat, you'll be using a little bit of that blending solution just to get the alcohol off your craft mat so that it's nice and clean. So that's my strips ready to punch. So I don't normally treat you to the clean up process, but I just thought you might like to see how easily it does clean up. A little bit of kitchen roll, a little bit of blending solution. It's almost like cleaning your nails. You know how the alcohol on the acetone dries out and you have to add a little bit more to your tissue before you manage to finish off all your fingers? Well, it's exactly the same here. It does tend to dry out on the tissue, so just little bits at a time, and eventually you'll have a lovely clean area. I also found it did seem to help get the glue off my craft mat, so I might have to investigate that a bit further later on. So for the next step I needed a image, and I did not have that gorgeous stamp that Tim used, and I decided to make one of my own. And anybody that knows my blog will recognise this image as the one that I use as my, I don't know what you call it, is it an avatar or an icon? And all I've done is taken it into Photoshop and used the stamp filter. So I, in effect, turned myself into a stamp, and then I printed that onto my piece of cardstock. So it took me a little while to position it, so I printed it out on plain paper first and worked out where it was going to end up on my tag, and you can see that I've drawn the tag shape onto my piece of paper to make sure I get it in the right position. And now I'm just trimming that down into the tag that I'm going to be working on. So this was quite a fun thing to do, and actually it made me think that I want to do this with some family images and to create some sort of funky portraits using that same function in Photoshop. So all I did was drop my black and white photograph into Photoshop, and then under filter there was a filter called stamp, and you can change sort of the lightness and darkness and the thickness of the lines and things. So you know, if you need to clean it up a little bit. This photograph was taken a few years ago, and I'm pretty sure that I'd have a few more lines to clean up if I was going to use the image of my face today, but it worked out quite well, and the image came out quite crisp and clean, so I didn't really have to do that much to it, just save it and print it out. And I was so happy with the effect that I picked up another photograph from this range of photographs that I took, and this was before I even knew what a selfie was, many moons ago when I started scrapbooking. We were supposed to do a challenge, and I had an idea for a layout, and I wanted to use the idea of thinking. So I quickly rushed home, got my camera out, took a few photographs of myself from the side as no one else was in at the time, and this is from that range of photographs, and it turned out to be quite a nice photograph to use. Since I'm a bit of a craft designer, as you know, so it just shows me thinking. That's why I picked it to use as my icon on my blog and YouTube and things like that. So I'm just going to speed myself back up again now I've finished waffling and telling you how I created this. Alternatively, you could use a stamped image similar to the one, or the same as the one that Tim used, which is a side-on or a profile view of a lady that allowed him to create that illusion of a butterfly hairdo. And you could use stamps that you've got in your collection that are similar, or you could try what I've just tried to explain to you here. So then I'm repeating the process of trimming this into a 3 by 6 inch strip, ready to trim the top and turn it into my second tag. So then it was time to punch out my leaves. So a couple of things that I realised at the end of punching out my leaves. One is I'm not going to show you them on camera because this punch really was a pain in the bum and kept sticking, so it took me quite a while to get to grips with it, although I did manage to cure the sticking in the end by punching a piece of greaseproof paper. So I don't want you to see me wibbling and wobbling the camera as I punch out all my leaves, and I'll be back again in a minute with a pile of leaves to show you. So hey presto, and all my leaves are punched out, and it was at this point that I thought, Helen, you haven't done it right. You needed to stamp on that piece of paper before you punched out all those leaves, but I do have a plan to rectify it. So if you decide to follow this tutorial in any way, remember to stamp your papers before you punch out the leaves. Now the other thing that I've done is cut a couple of pieces of black cardstock ready to trim them to the right size for my tags. So I'm just holding them in position, and I just want a nice fine border all the way around the outside of my tag, and then I'm trimming these black pieces of cardstock into a tag shape. And you can see how this really frames those black images on the coloured tags. So there were two things that I really wish that I'd done before I'd punched the leaves out. One of them was to colour the back of the cardstock as well as the front, because I'm going to be shaping my leaves and I don't really want that white cardstock to be showing, and this is where I really get my hands nice and inky. So I'm just using some of the plain colours of alcohol ink and colouring the backs of all of my leaves. So this is a little bit further on in the process, and I'm just finishing off those last leaves. And then to finish off and get myself to the same place as Tim had with his butterflies, I need to stamp the fronts of the leaves with a text stamp. And I managed to find this stamp that I had in my collection, which actually has an autumnal, or the dictionary definition of the word autumn, so it's quite appropriate for these little leaves. If you're doing this on a full-size piece of glossy paper, you'll need to be careful that you don't slip and slide on the paper, but because I've punched my leaves out, that was one advantage to stamping them, and I'm stamping them with a black archival ink. So they do take a moment to dry, so don't be tempted to put your fingers on top of that ink until they are nice and dry. And now for the fun part, I'm going to give myself a leafy hairdo. So I'm using the sort of orangey and red and green leaves on this blue tag. And then I'm just sort of following my own hair and creating a little wig made out of leaves. I'm just using a PVA glue to attach them, and I've shaped them slightly before actually sticking them onto the card. I punched a couple of half-inch circles out of the alcohol inked papers to match the leaves that I'm using on each of the tags, and then I'm stamping them in the same way that I did the leaves. And then it's ready to create haircut or leafy wig number 2. It's funny how when you're making certain projects that you think, do you know, I've hit on a really nice idea here, and I can take this further. And I really think that this is a great way to make some fun portraits of your family. You might not want to give them all leafy wigs, but I'm pretty sure you could do lovely stamped backgrounds, and perhaps do a series of tags of the people in your family. And I think I'm going to be doing that, and I'm sure that I will share them with you when I finally get around to trying it out for myself. So 2 tags waiting for some ribbon, and I decided I'm going to go completely alcohol, and I'm going to try using alcohol inks to colour my ribbon. I'm using a American seam binding, so I'm hoping that one doesn't react with the other, and I'm going to be using my alcohol inks to colour my ribbon. I've decided to go with a one colour base, so I'm literally just adding more and more, or more little puddles of yellow alcohol ink to my craft mat and dragging the ribbon through it, and you can see it travels quite quickly along the length of your ribbon. It is quite smelly, so make sure you've got a well ventilated room, and as soon as you've coloured all your ribbon, let it dry. I wouldn't recommend using your heat gun to dry your ribbon. So I'm just letting it mop up those last bits of ink, and moving it around in the air in the hope that it will dry even quicker. So a quick clean up, and I'm going to use the blue alcohol ink to colour my next length of ribbon. And I'm aware that on screen actually it probably looks a little bit green, but it is actually called cloudy blue, and it looks a lot bluer in real life. So just put little puddles of ink, and then letting it just filter along that piece of ribbon. So back to my yellow ribbon, and I wanted to create some texture on my piece of ribbon, so I'm using a stiff paintbrush and dipping it in my puddle of ink, and then flicking it over my entire piece of ribbon, and I'm just moving it around to make sure I get plenty of splatters all over. And I'm using the same colour to do exactly the same thing to the blue piece of ribbon, hence the very red fingernail, which is still looking a bit disgusting this morning. So I'm thinking I might have to get that bottle of blending solution out and try and get rid of the worst of that cranberry ink that is now well and truly under my fingernails. So should you decide to give it a go, I definitely recommend perhaps putting a glove on for that flicking part of the process, particularly if you've got a very nice manicure, because it definitely will stick to your fingernails until you clean it off. So what to do with my pieces of ribbon and the embellishing of these tags? Well, I quite like how clean and bold, graphic that they look, and I don't want to create too fussy embellishing from this point onwards. So I've decided, although this ribbon has gone quite stiff with the alcohol ink and I could quite easily pleat it, that I'm going to go with a flat finish on the bottom of my tag. But first I'm going to be using my rub-ons in the background of my stamped image, so around the outside of each of my face. Around the outside of my face I'm going to be using these rub-ons. So I'm going to create a little collage around each of these images, and I'm just going to piece together bits and pieces from this rub-on set. I think this is the numbers rub-on set. I think Tim used a botanical one, and I think there are a couple of different versions. You get 2 sheets in each, and they're lovely to use because they're, you know, just lots and lots of little elements that you can add to a whole host of projects. So I'm just being careful not to completely wreck my stamp sheet as I select the little bits and pieces that I want to use on my tag. This did take a little while to do, but it was quite fun just selecting different elements to use on your tag. So just take your time and just cut little bits and pieces from your rub-on sheet and create a nice collage around the outside of the image. So I've decided to use some of these lovely embossed stickers that Tim Holtz does to add with my ribbon on the bottoms of my tags. So I'm first of all laying down a thick strip of strong double-sided tape and then wrapping my ribbon over that, and then I'm adding some thin strong tape just to make sure that these stickers stay in place on the ribbon, and I'm adding a strip above and below the ribbon. I did think about creating myself a crown, but I thought that was a step too far. And then I'm happy that I don't need any more access to the back of my tag, so I'm sticking it to that piece of black card. So this time I'm repeating the whole process on the second tag, this time using the yellow ribbon. Another strip of that, I think it's called industrial stickers. They really have got a lovely feel. They do feel a bit like punched metal. And then again adding it to its black frame. And again I wanted to keep the ribbon nice and flat from the top of the tag. So I'm taking 2 lengths of ribbon and then folding them flat on top of each other at the top of the tag. Repeating that with the blue ribbon. Then I've got a small black safety pin and a silver leaf charm, and I'm pinning right through all 4 pieces of ribbon, and then I'm just trimming the tops of them so that they get slightly longer all the way to the back piece of ribbon. So the shortest piece of ribbon at the front and then the longest at the back, and I'm repeating that on this blue ribbon, trying to get them roughly the same length, except I'm just cutting them in the opposite angle. And I decided I'd quite like to use another little piece of ribbon, so I'm just knotting a piece of ribbon through another leaf charm and trimming the ends on the diagonal and repeating that for the blue tag. So for the final steps, as you know, I like to attach a photograph of Tim's original tag, the tag that inspired me to take this journey, to the back of my tags. Obviously I'm going to do it on the back of both tags, and then I'm creating a little charm with the logo, which I've just shrunk down a bit, and this reminds me of the month that I made this tag. And I have checked this with Tim, because I did have somebody that was queried whether I should be using these images or not, which got me a little bit concerned that I was doing something that wasn't quite right, but he's more than happy in the way that I'm using them, and so I'm going to continue using them to remind me of the fun that I had and when I had it, and of course to remind me of that original inspiration. Now, because a little bit of that industrial sticker was showing at the bottom of my tag, I'm just adding a little bit of talc. You can just about see that on camera, just to take the stickiness away of that tiny little piece that's showing at the back of the tag. And then I'm using some hot glue to add my little leaf charm and my month of September charm. Now, I probably shouldn't have done that at this point. I should have done the next step first and then added my charm, but hey ho, I've got a plan. I'm just flicking my ribbon out of the way, making sure that the leaf is out of the way, and then I'm going to be adding a few little coloured dots. Now, I've had this stuff for absolutely donkey's years and it's still going strong, and it's a kind of raised paint, so it dries raised, makes a little sort of pearly blob, and I'm just using the colours that I've used on my tag, so in this case the blue and the red, just slightly off camera, and then the red and the sort of mustardy yellow on the second tag. I just realised I'm off camera and I'm just using my scissors to keep that ribbon out of the way while these little dots of colour dry. So this one, I have to say, much as I said that these have lasted and stood the test of time, does seem to be drying in the bottle a little bit, but I did manage, it was a little bit sticky as I was pulling away, and you know how you hot glue gun leaves little trails, it wanted to do that, but I did manage to just swirl it a little bit, and it allowed me to make a couple of pearls just to finish off my tag. So there you have it, my two tags and my take on Tim Holtz's 12 tags of 2014, and this is the month of September. And here's the arty shot of my leafy tags on a leaf, and this is a rhubarb leaf out in my garden. You can see it's starting to show signs of autumn as well. I really hope you've enjoyed watching how I got from Tim's original inspiration to my interpretation. Definitely a challenge worth playing along with if you like to make tags, or if you want to learn how to make tags. Lots of lovely techniques and tips to learn every month over on the Tim Holtz blog. So until next time, don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you've enjoyed my videos. Just press the like button and the share button, and I hope that you join me again next time I'm creating here on my YouTube channel. Until next time, don't forget to stay tuned for the links at the end of the video, and thank you for watching. So, as I promised, here's the link to my Etsy shop so that you can purchase a workshop to make tag storage of your own. This little design can be personalised. As you can see here, I've personalised it for my Zentangle alphabet, and this one I actually gave to Tim Holtz. So I used his gorgeous papers and distress inks to make this something that I thought might suit his style, and this is the version, the steampunk version, that I made for myself this year to house this year's tag, and you will have seen that a few times on my videos. So all my online workshops come with full photographic and written instructions, as well as links to all the videos that you'll need to step you through the making of this fun project to store all your lovely tag works of art. And last but not least, here is a couple of links, one to this year's tags and one to last year's.